Is an ETF approval likely for today? Well, we can talk about very subjective things, of which who the hell knows actually. But in the background, there are some statistical setups that I do believe, well, deserve some merit and can give a little bit of guidance as to, maybe what's most likely to happen. Anyways, other than that, I'm going to welcome you back to the Krown Crypto channel. I have a major question for the crew here. What's wrong with eating ice? I got so many comments about this yesterday, and it feels good. It tastes good. It wakes you up in the early morning hours, and well, I think also very, very old people do it as well, which may or may not be a good thing. Who the hell knows? But I'm sticking by it, and let's just jump right into the analysis of the day. So first things first, as I do go to my chart view, I always like to look at and remind myself of the statistics on the day. And in this case, Friday, a little bit better than a coin toss at 52%, or a little bit above 52% of all dailies closing positively throughout Bitcoin's history, with an average return on the positive side of about 2.18%, on the losing side about 1.85%. So, looking at that in terms of where the daily opened, what would that essentially look like? I mean, Bitcoin already had like a pretty nasty move to the downside there. That was interesting. 1.881% would put Bitcoin basically back down around 43,350. And if it were to be on the positive side at 2.18%, then that would put Bitcoin actually on new closing highs. Yeah, it actually put Bitcoin on new closing highs, just a little bit north of $45,000, which I do think is also of interest. It will kind of come into context with the analysis. I think that we get right on over here. I want to remind myself of this setup that we looked at yesterday. In this case, it is still very much active, still very much available, as it did fire off at about $43,000. This was on Wednesday officially. I want to remind myself as well that looking at our performance summary over here, we do expect winning trades to take 23 bars on average, and losing trades to take about 41 bars on average. So the longer that this does go on, the more and more likely it is to be a loss. But until then, the average return on these was about about 4%. Right on the money. And the average return on the losing trades was a little bit about 4.25%, but within, with a strike rate of 67.16%, it's not bad, I'd say, especially when you backtest this over the past 5 years, going back to 2018. I guess that's actually closer to 6 years. Anyways, yep. So in this case right here, it does still suggest that there is a higher probability of an upside move. We did see a short-term upside move yesterday with Bitcoin getting just below $45,000. But that doesn't really do anything for this. The exit criteria has not been met. If you're actually looking for the criteria on how to set this up on the skeleton key, there is a new post in the Discord section relevant for that, which can show you how to do that. But in this case, if we were to play around with those numbers, what does 4% on top of that entry look like? That entry, again, about $43,000. 4% puts you back at around 4% actually puts you at 44,750. So this is very interesting, and this is really where I guess the philosophy of trading comes into question, right? Because you've already hit what you would expect on average if you're looking at a setup like this. So you have to ask yourself, okay, do you get quote unquote greedy, or is it even greedy to be looking for the official exit criteria and waiting for potentially more? In this case, I would estimate it would be significantly more, because the PMARP is so low already. Realistically, it needs to get above 65 percentile for this one to even consider closing, and that's on the moving average for that, not even on the plot. So that would take some time and probably imply much higher prices. Just speaking offhand here. Or do you say, hey, it already hit the 4%, take the money and run and reposition later? This is a preference question. Now, theoretically, it actually is, and I'm not giving any sort of financial advice here. I'm not saying what you should do. I'm just speaking in generalities and speaking in a philosophical tone. But technically speaking, if you're looking at these statistics here as relevant, which, I mean, they are as they are. I mean, people lie, statistics don't. So it is what it is there. But if you're looking at these as relevant, then you actually should, or you would look at that as you should hold, and wait for the actual official exit criteria to be met, which again is PMARP signal line above 65 percentile. Because that is what all of the past 5 or almost 6 years of history is backtested on here. But at the same time, as just like a trading decision, do you take the money and run? I'm personally speaking, I actually do look at that as more relevant or more valuable. I mean, when the money's in your hand, take it and fucking run. Yeah, can it go on for more? Certainly, yes. I mean, let's see what actually was the maximum gainer on this one. Not that we're going to see like a maximum largest winning trade. It's something ridiculous here. I don't even want to read it off. I'll put it this way: it's more than 20%, which is fucking crazy. I don't think that you're going to get something like this. But with this current setup right here, if it does continue to play out in that upside fashion, you would very likely be looking at new highs on this rally. So again, I think that's just an interesting topic for a video like this. There's no right or wrong answer. There is a theoretical, which you should hold until the official exit criteria is met. And then the other one is just, well, hey, nice trade. 43 to 45, $2,000 in just a couple days. Okay, close your hands, take the money, and fucking run. But again, when we look at this, we do see that the average amount of time taken in even the winning trades at 23 bars would be what? How many days is that? Well, 23 times 4, so that's 80, 92. So how many days is that? Like around 4. I actually don't even really know. I need to get my calculator out here. 24 times 4 would be what? Yeah, it's around like 4 days. And that fired off again on Wednesday around midday. So where would 23 bars put us at? 23 bars puts you at Sunday, actually. Sunday, and again, that's an average, could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but somewhere around there is fair game. Longer that it goes on from there, more and more likely it is to be a failure. Now, I think in this case, judging a failure is actually pretty simple. Anywhere below, especially on a closing base, now the Wednesday low, Wednesday's low would do it for me, as far as not just confirming this as a loser, but likely some major downside to come, as we'll go over a little bit later in this video. So this video is very fucking nuanced, or at least hopefully it's very nuanced if I do my job properly. But yeah, as far as it goes right now, still would be suggesting a higher probability of an upside move from this, emerging from this formation. But here's the thing. It's no secret that traditional markets, as we spoke about coming into early this year, are likely to open up on a pullback. We've seen that. I mean, NASDAQ's down from 17,200, almost 1,000 points now, and probably going to come down a little bit more from here. I think it probably drops somewhere around 16-ish, let's say. But the question is, does that drag Bitcoin down with it, or does an ETF come and save the day? I don't know. Or could that even mark, the next major high? I think it probably does mark the next major high. The more and more that I think about it, the more and more that I look at, just the general markets and what's going on here. So, what's the picture that I'm trying to paint here? The one that I'm trying to paint is actually of caution. Even though we do have that present on Bitcoin, I do think that, whatever rally that does emerge, if there is even going to be one, from that $43,000 level, is probably gonna be short-lived overall. So yeah, and I think a lot of people are looking for this ETF to be dropped basically between now and like next week. Friday is typically the day for these things to come out. So today would actually make a lot of sense if that's going to be happening. But again, this is speculative, that's subjective. I want to go off of statistics. So going back to Bitcoin over here, we still do see that there is potential for hidden bullish divergence on the 3-day time frame. If this one does confirm, I'd say that you're going to see it's a very high probability that we do see one more move to the upside alongside this setup over here on the 4-hour time frame to new highs on this rally. But at that point, you're going to have some bearish divergence very likely in the making on the 3-day time frame. I think it's even all the way up to the 5-day time frame. Yeah, at some point you're going to have it there as well. As things do get more and more hot, but ultimately, this one still is another day to close, so it's not confirmed as of right now. It's kind of a phantom in the background. So tomorrow night there'll be a bigger focus on that. But essentially, as long as Bitcoin's here or higher, yeah, that will confirm. And I'd say, hey, one more drive higher, probably in alignment with some sort of an ETF announcement in this next week span, maybe even today. And at that point, I'd be very cognizant that Bitcoin's likely to put in, a major high. Revisiting this chart over here, which I think caused a lot of confusion in the past couple of days. Maybe some of that is from me. Maybe some of that is just people misunderstanding. But at the end of the day, the 2-day time frame, looking at volatility right here, well, it is still contracting. And so when we look at that in alignment with the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator, it's not a signal in and of itself as long as that is not happening. And what I mean by that is volatility expansion. And so looking at it right here, the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator is still positioned to the downside. Yes, it was above for a little bit of time yesterday, but it did not close above that 44,250 pivot. Or at least let me just double check. It actually I forgot what the pivot was yesterday, but yeah, technically it's still down. I mean, obviously you can see it right here, and that's really why it does take kind of 2 closes to really confirm an actual cross. But as long as Bitcoin's below 44,250, yeah, that remains to the downside. And this would be a higher probability of a bearish setup from this top being put in at about $45,000. The 5-day time frame, while we do not see an actual setup going on right here, we do see that the 5-day time frame stochastic oscillator is positioned to the downside from the critical zone, which usually when you see these two things align with each other, when one of these setups actually does fire off, they do play hand in hand, and it's a very high probabilistic explosive move in that direction. So, again, we're looking at somewhere around like a 20 to 30% move most likely from that. If it comes to the downside, you're looking at 36.5 to, I mean, maybe very low 30s, very possible. If it comes to the upside, which I do still think, you can, I mean, as long as Bitcoin's above yesterday's low, yeah, fine. Or maybe not yesterday's low, but Wednesday's low. But to the other side, what does 20 to 30% look like to the upside? 20% puts you about $49,000. 30% puts you obviously a lot more. But I'd say somewhere around like 50,000. So I suspect that we're gonna get the next sort of piece of the puzzle tomorrow night. Actually, not today, but tomorrow night, unless if there is some sort of an announcement today and you do see the next blow off. But for right now, what I can say about this is that, yeah, there are still things favoring the upside. They do go, or they are negated if Bitcoin comes back down below Wednesday's low. Let me just make sure that it is Wednesday's low. It is Wednesday's low. Until then, Bula still have the ball in their court. It does look like there could very easily be one more move here to the upside, but do be cognizant of that below Wednesday's low. And by the way, that this will change depending upon your exchange. So I'd just kind of blindly say, like 40,500. But below there, yeah, I would be looking for Bitcoin to put in that next move. It's not going to be all done in one day, but over the, probably over the rest of the month, maybe into February as well, down to the mid 30s minimum, low 30s potential. Until then, maybe one more move to the upside. But this is becoming more and more difficult here, within this current consolidation. For most of 2023, it's kind of easier to be blindly bullish. But as we've been saying, near the end of 2023, Q1 of 2024, there's very likely to be a major pullback. The question is when? Q1's a big time frame, January to March. Does it happen earlier on in the month alongside traditional markets, which are already pulling back? Maybe. Does it happen later? Maybe because an ETF announcement gets in the way and things, have a nice splurt up first and then come down later. Maybe. Again, this is why I think it's very important to have probabilities in the background and then the pivot points for when those become not just probabilities, but confirmed realities. And so I think we're starting to dial it in a little bit more here. And yeah, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off as well. All right, sweet. Okay, I'll end things right there. I feel like I'm missing something. No, okay, I did get all my charts. Beautiful. And I hit all my notes over here, so we're good. Sweet. Oh, I should also say that on this particular setup right here, remember, this is in the past 5 years, about just over 67% strike rate. What's interesting about this is that we have not seen a loss on this setup since October. Since then, we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins in a row. Oh, okay, that's not terrible, but still, it does seem like a little bit egregious. Before that, it was a lot more evenly spaced out. And I know that probabilities don't work like that, blah, 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 but in my experience, they fucking do. like, look, if you're flipping a coin, if you're flipping a coin and you've got 10 heads in a row, I'm probably going to bet on tails. Yes, I fucking know that each and every one is is unique. But for fuck's sake, at some point, you have to put some sort of perspective on it. Anyways, yeah, that's where we'll end things. Traditional markets continue to pull back. Bitcoin undecided as of right now, and we'll come back to tomorrow, maybe even with an ETF as well. All right, sweet. With that said, take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.